After we've entered all of our tasks from the network diagram into the Gantt chart, we need to add in our resources, the people, equipment, facilities and so on that we need to complete our project. This is so important because no project is just us alone. I always need help from other people. For example, if I'm working in a lab and ask the lab technician to set up a bit of kit for me this afternoon, I'll probably get told no chance, as they're busy with other work. However, if I say, is there any chance of getting this in 3 weeks' time? Okay, there's no guarantee, but there's a higher likelihood of it happening because you're allowing people to plan you into their lives, which are equally as busy as ours. Same with supervisors, colleagues, or participants, or reserving bits of kit, or booking facilities and so on. The first thing to remember is that, initially at least, you only ever plan your project with the resource you have available to you. In our mini project here, we have several resources. Paul is responsible for ordering the concrete. I dig the foundations and order the bricks. We've got an external supplier to pour the concrete. Setting concrete is a passive activity, so it doesn't require a resource. And the bricklaying team will assign one member to build a wall. So I have all of my tasks resourced. And now what happens, and the computer's actually really good at doing this, is we calculate our resource profile for the project. Basically, who is doing what and when. This should be done for all the resources, people, equipment, materials, facilities and so on, that you're going to need across your project. But for the sake of simplicity, here I'll just look at my own resourcing profile. So day one of the project, I'm doing two things. Day two, I'm doing two things. Same on days 3 and 4. Days 5 through to 8, I'm doing one thing per day. And then the remainder of the project, I'm free. So now I can see when I have busier times and I have quieter times. I'm looking at my resource profile. If I do this for all of my resources, I can let people know in advance when I'm going to need their help and assistance, and they can begin to plan me into their lives, which are also very busy. Now, assuming I've planned that the resources are working 100% on each task that they've been assigned to, then the first 4 days of the project, I am 200% allocated. And that's not good. It might be that sometimes this isn't an issue because you can multitask, so you can ignore the warnings. But let's assume here that I can't multitask these activities. It means that I have a problem. Now, there are 2 ways to address this problem. The first is that I could try to get another resource to do one of those tasks. That would resolve my conflict. However, for most of us, we don't have more resources we can call upon. In fact, resource is actually our main constraint. It's pretty much just me on my own. And this is where Slack becomes incredibly valuable to us. When we identify that we have peaks and troughs in resourcing requirements, the second way of addressing our conflict is to use Slack to move around tasks to try and avoid overallocation. This is called leveling. For example, I know that I have a lot of slack after dig foundations, so I could try moving that task to as late as possible. But I still have resourcing conflicts doing this. So I'll leave that where it is, and instead I'll move up ordering bricks. I've managed to level out my resource. We do this over an entire project to try and even out our workload. But if there isn't enough slack, then we refer back to our triangle. Either I'll have to do more things at once, increase the number of hours I work each day, or the whole project is going to take longer. Everything comes back to the triangle. If I need to calculate a budget, I can now do it fairly simply from my Gantt chart. How much are my resources working over the project? How much will that cost? What other resources are involved? Materials, equipment, travel, and so on. I add those together, and you've created a basic budget. As long as the data in my Gantt chart is correct, I can get out all sorts of useful information. Finally, I now have a plan I can trust that tells me it's possible to complete this phase of the project in 21 days. My problem is the deadline is 20 days. So I look at my critical path and I try to identify effort-driven tasks. I could look to see where I need to work more hours each day to deliver things more quickly. But that doesn't really work in this example. In this case, I look along my critical path and I notice building the wall. So I look to crash here. At the moment, this is being performed by a single bricklayer. So what I do is I go to the bricklaying team and ask if they could assign a second resource to help out on that task. This now means we can finish the activity earlier and get inside the timeline with a few days to spare. If they can't spare another resource, then we can objectively explain to the boss why it's not possible to finish the project in time. It's evidence-based planning. Once again, it's very difficult to do this for an entire research project. So I'd suggest phasing your work and only planning what you can plan. For instance, the next couple of months. Planning for a pilot study, planning for a bit of data collection, maybe some field work, or planning a certain set of experiments. It's also clearly very helpful with collaboration, or if you're working within a research group or within a team. But even if you're working on your own, for example doing a PhD, it allows you to monitor and manage your own workload, but it also allows other people to be able to schedule time to help you when you actually need it. So in summary, plan with the resources that you have. Calculate your resource profile. Where possible, level conflict using Slack. And then consider crashing to optimize further.